Um, so today is going to be just a recap. There's a couple things. This TerraFlex Advanced about setting up real time, doing waypoints navigation. I didn't cover that. A little bit of the field maintenance, file maintenance, I should say. I covered that a little bit. We could do just kind of a field to finish review, starting from data dictionary, going all the way through it. At the end of last Monday's session, we did cover this batch processor. Basically, it does the transfer, processing, and export all in like a press of a button, really. These last two we can definitely cover. There's not too much in here, so these are only like 15 minutes. Before we get going today, is there anything specific that you all want to cover? I know I missed, I must have taken it out here. I missed this part when I did the data dictionary on the first session. In the data dictionary creation, I did not show how to import from existing data. So I'll kind of show that as kind of like basically today's just all this extra little things in the software. So I'll be able to go back and hit that one. I apologize for missing that the first session, but it's a really quick and easy workflow. But is there anything that, I know all y'all weren't able to make each session, so is there anything specific that y'all want to cover? Because we definitely can do all this in under 2 hours. So just give y'all the floor for a minute and just see what y'all may have.
Hey, this is Lila. Just letting you know, I don't have any specific questions. I started watching your session one video for the data dictionary, and I'll see you forward. So thank you for that.
Okay, so the video worked out pretty good then.
Yeah, definitely. It looks really great, and you explained things really clearly. So no questions for me.
Yeah, same here. No specific questions.
Okay. Well, then I will. Okay, Carrie's hopping on. Go ahead, Carrie.
Oh, I was just going to say the same thing. I don't have any specific questions.
Okay. Well, I'll just kind of go through the software, note a few things. We'll start here with TerraSync. I'll go over real time, what those different things mean. We'll stick with TerraSync for a minute. Any questions that pop up, definitely ask. And then we'll go back in the Office software. I'll do these kind of advanced tools. I wouldn't say advanced, but these extra tools that we have in the software. And then we'll maybe just do one last run through field to finish. Before I get started, though, is there any specific accuracies that y'all need when you collect the data, or is it sub-meter good? I know there's a Nomad, so that's like 2 to 5 meters. But for Lila and Jason, is there I think y'all mentioned Geo7s, or even the group down in Florida. Do you know if they need better than sub-meter accuracy?
I'm not sure. I think for me, I want to know what's possible, and then we can go from there. But I'm pretty sure for what I'm doing, sub-meter is good. But if it can get better, I'd be interested to hear about that.
Okay, good. So I'll start with that we'll go into the GPS unit. So let me get some of this stuff off the screen here. So this is TerraSync on a Geo 7X. And I'm going to go to the Start menu here. And I'm going to go down to, back up to Settings. Sorry, I was using my mouse. That wasn't working. So on the Geo, I'm going to go up to Settings. And I'm going to go to the System folder. And in here, we have an icon called System Information. Now, these geos have the ability to be upgraded. So it comes in 3 models. So a default model would come with everything deactivated except for NEMA. Those are usually activated. So a sub-meter geo would look like floodlight floodlight should be activated. I'll talk about that in a second. NEMA is just an output, Centimeter is centimeter accuracy or RTK accuracy, and H-star is sub-foot / 4-inch accuracy. The reason I say sub-foot is some of our devices, the R2 comes in a sub-foot model, but it's really a decimeter unit. So H-star here, I should have just said decimeter. So if you all have a G07X and you look in here and you see, oh, my H-star is activated, that means the device has the ability to get down to 4-inch accuracy. If it says centimeter, then you can get down to a couple inch accuracy with that device. I think it's 2 centimeters, maybe 3 centimeters horizontal. So these devices, if you do at some point in time need a higher level of accuracy, let me shut off my email here. You can always purchase an option to upgrade. Now this floodlight, go ahead.
Hey, sorry. Can you show us again how to navigate to this page? I didn't quite see.
Yeah, sure. Do y'all have one with y'all? A G07?
No, it's actually downstairs in a different office.
Got you. Okay, so it's under Start. It's under Start. So I just hit the Windows flag right here. I'm going to go down to Settings. And I'm going to click on Settings. And then there's a folder called System. It's at the bottom. And then at the bottom of this menu, I'm going to scroll all the way to the bottom. There's a screen called System Information. And this just tells you a little bit about the unit itself. So before y'all hopped on the call, Carrie and I were working on her Nomad. She's saying the GPS wasn't connecting. And I had her go in here basically to give me this firmware version. This is the current firmware for the GNSS on a G07. This is the current firmware, like operating system, 6.7.18. It's definitely recommended to be on these levels of firmware, or versions, I should say. But I tab over here to options. And this is where basically it'll tell you what kind of device you have. Out of the box, submeter, centimeter, and H-star will be deactivated, or option not installed. I can't remember what it's called. But anyway, you can activate these options. They all cost a little bit, you know. If you activate centimeter, then you have to purchase centimeter TerraSync software to enable that use. But this by looking at this, it'll just tell you basically if you have H-star activated, it's a 4-inch, can achieve 4-inch accuracy. Floodlight is a technology that Trimbe came up with. It's basically composed of 3 parts. The first being that the GPS tracks all constellations. So in the past, let's say Carrie's Nomad, for example, probably only tracks GPS. So at the best, if she was out in the field in the wide open, she'd probably see 8 to 10 satellites on a good day. On the older 6000 unit, floodlight meant it would track GPS and GLONASS. This is the Rusting constellation. It adds about another 10 to 12 satellites. So on a good day in the wide open, if you had both these satellite constellations, you could track up to 20 satellites. And now with this G07, we track all constellations. So currently, this is tracking GPS, GLONASS, the European satellite system called Galileo. Beidou is an Indian system, and QZSS is China. I may have got these last two mixed up there, but for the most part, those are all the systems: China, India, European, GLONASS, and GPS. If you're tracking all of these on a good day, you can see over 30 satellites. So what that means is if you get in a tough environment, and you all pretty much work in those environments when you're around canopy and trees and stuff like that, you may lose satellites. So on the older system, just tracking GPS, if you're tracking 10 satellites and you get under some trees and you drop down to 5 or 4, you may have a tougher time collecting data. Whereas if you were using one that was tracking 30 in the open, and maybe, let's say it lost half, you're still tracking 15 satellites, so you're getting a good position. Or you're able to get a better position because you're tracking more constellations. So that's kind of one part of this floodlight. So Floodlight 1 opens up more satellite constellations. The second thing it does is it has a barometer on the device. So if you were to flip over the Geo 7X, it would actually have two little holes in it, and those are for a barometer. Let's see if I've got my, I'll run this little presentation real quick. So here's the Geo 7. I'll just run through these. Antenna port, the home screen, start screen, SIM card on the left side. So I use a hotspot. I don't really get an integrated SIM just for this device. I just use a hotspot if I want to connect to the internet. We'll talk about why we need that in a minute. These are your application keys. Center button there does the camera, or it does a laser if you have a laser attached. You can program the two other keys to start up certain applications. Carrie can do the same on a Nomad. It should have some keys like this, maybe not exact like this, but it has keys that you can program as well to do specific functions. I don't use the microphone. The home button here, this allows you to turn it on and off. It allows you to calibrate the screen, things of that nature, reset the device. The antenna's on the top. We have a little light sensor here. The software has a screen to where if you go out in the open and it's really bright, the screen will change. If you get in a dark room, the screen will adjust. I usually turn that off and just crank the screen all the way up. The right side here, we have an SD card slot and then the speaker. The whole point of this was to show you these little holes here for the barometer. So I flip the unit over. This is where the laser connects to. The stylus is on the bottom. I guess if you're looking at this direction, it's on the left. The camera's on the top. And these two little holes here are barometer vents. So that barometer helps with elevation. So if you have a laser on top of it, it still is able to use the barometer. So the second part of Floodlight that we see right here. So the first one was extra satellites. The second one was the barometer. And the third one is Trimbe opened up the settings inside of TerraSync now. They call it smart settings. So if we go open TerraSync, and basically they wide opened everything and they only weed out a little bit of data. That way we're not throwing good data away. So they opened up, they changed some algorithms around. But if I go in here to settings, you'll see this thing called smart settings. That's pretty much these smart settings help with this new algorithm they wrote to better filter the data. So they basically just open this thing up. So that is Floodlight. So that's the first place you would go to check the GPS, see what the accuracy is. Another way is just to call, and we could search by the serial number, but this is by far the best way. Under Start, Settings, System folder, and then System information. Let's see. Nothing else really in here that we're going to talk about. All right, so now that we're talking about real time, let's do a little slide on real time. Here we go. Okay. So raw GPS, we talked about this in our first session, maybe the second one when we're talking about TerraSync, but raw GPS means there's no corrections. The position is up to 10 meters off. Basically, the signal gets bounced around, delayed when it's traveling through the ionosphere and troposphere. It adds time, and it throws off your position. So sometimes you may go out and see the position's way off, and then other times it may not be too far off when you process. So autonomous GPS, this is the reason we were doing post-processing last, I guess on Monday. But then we have real time. So let's say we need accuracy in the field, or let's say we want to just collect data with real time and don't worry about post-processing in the office. The first one here is SBAS, Satellite-Based Augmentation System. In the U.S., we call this WAAS, and that's WAAS. It's basically a satellite system run by the FAA for the airplanes flying. And as civilians, we're able to use this as a free correction. It is sub-meter. So let's say I had a centimeter geo. If I connected to SBAS, my accuracy is only going to get as good as that correction, which is sub-meter. The best I see out of this one is maybe 16 to 18 inches. Usually it's around the 2-foot range you'll get out of SBAS. So the way it works, we have a base station. They have ground stations all over the U.S., and they upload corrections to what we call geostationary satellite. The satellite is on the southern hemisphere pretty much. Well, actually, it's on the equator. So it's low on the horizon. So if you are facing south when you're collecting data, you'll be able to track this better. That's with any GPS, I guess. If you're having trouble tracking satellites, if you face south, you may get a better reception because your body may be blocking it. But for this satellite, you definitely need line of sight to it. If you don't have line of sight, you won't track the signal. But it is free. It is sub-meter. We don't do that one anymore. Real-time satellite differential. So in this case, they're talking about OmniStar. It works the same way as WAAS or SBAS, except it's a paid service and it's a little more accurate than SBAS. Trimbe bought OmniStar from Fugro Chance 5 or 6 years ago, maybe, and they now have developed a system called RTX. When I had the Geo up earlier, there was a little tab for RTX. So you could get RTX. It's a paid subscription. They have 4 or 5 different levels of accuracy, ranging from sub-meter to sub-foot, and then like 30 centimeters. 30 centimeters is sub-foot. So there's like 30 centimeter, 10 centimeter, and then there's like a 2 centimeter one. So there's a handful of different levels of accuracy you can pay for that one. Some of my customers have their own base station. In Georgia, there's a handful that own their own base, and they just broadcast corrections to the field. This is typically done through the internet. So the device itself is connected to the internet. Typically a hotspot's the best way to do it these days. But yeah, they use their own base to get corrections. Alabama has a free single base network, and so does Florida. Georgia has a free network, a paid network. It's called VRS. Basically, Trimbe has VRS in Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, Florida. You can use the same you can use VRS in Florida for free. It's a different service. You can use it's run by DOT. Same thing with Alabama DOT. But in Georgia, it's definitely just Trimbe. But I know y'all work in a few different spots. Where y'all are working, you can actually probably hit the Alabama network or a Florida network to get corrections because they share stations down there on the coast. The way it works is you track satellites, it sends your position to the server, the VRS server, and then they send you a correction back. So those are free. These they're free in Florida and Alabama and Mississippi. You do need internet access in order to make this work on a Geo 7. As far as the Nomad, it wouldn't be worth doing it on the Nomad because the Nomad is only 2 to 4 meter accurate, I think. It's been a little while since I messed with one of those. But you could attach an external receiver like an R2, which could get the higher level accuracies, and just use the Nomad as a data collector. Here's kind of how processing works. Even real time, it works the same way. We're out in the field with the rover here. The base station is logging data we're tracking the same satellite, and basically, oh, that screen's not animated anymore. So basically, we're tracking a satellite. There's error in the signal. The base station knows where it's at. It calculates how far off the satellite signal is, and it adjusts our position. So the wording they say is 2 receivers track the same signals and those errors at the same time. So this correction, when we post-processed on Monday, it was doing all that math in the background based on this, really. When you're in the field real time, it's doing the same thing. It's just sending you corrections in the field. Let's see, we'll skip most of this stuff. There's a couple good ones about when you're collecting data. It's always good to keep that antenna straight up and down. It's talking about multipath here. Multipath is when the signal bounces off of an object before it hits your antenna. So what they mean by that is, like, if you're by a building or some trees, just put your back to the trees. Typically, if you're in the trees, though, they're all around you, so you just got to work as best you can. So this is an older slide here. It says, let me go back. It says, avoid harsh environments when collecting H-star data. Well, when this was written, look, 2012, so this is pretty old now. Technology's changed a lot when that floodlight came out, and it makes it easier to collect data in tougher environments. You may not always get super high accuracy in the trees. Like, you may never get centimeter, but you can definitely get under a meter. You know, we have some people that get pretty good accuracies under the trees if they follow certain rules and, you know, pop out in the open and collect data for a minute or two and then quickly go in and shoot it under the trees. But trees and urban canyons are definitely not good on GPS. So there's ways to get around that with offsets and kind of planning out. Here's some things about receiver accuracy. Just make sure your antenna height's correct. Hold the antenna over the feature you're shooting. You know, y'all are shooting trees and bushes. It's not as big of a deal as maybe shooting in a water meter that gets buried or something like that you have to go back exactly to it. Here's a good one for when you're working in a tough environment. It's good to start logging right when you get to the feature and close it as soon as you can, 5-10 seconds. The longer you sit there, the more multipath affects the data. Here's one. Post-processing will use all the information before and after the feature. And then it says, whenever possible, collect 30, 60 seconds of good data before a tough feature, before and after. That's what I meant by if you're in the trees and then you can find an opening, go out and collect data in the open. And what they mean by that is you just let it's logging in the background, so you just let the receiver just log and then go back in and collect. Post-processing improved results. It does forward and backward processing, uses all the data, and then it does some extra stuff for these nomads. We call these surf-based chips. These are small GPS chips, the Juno, the Nomad, the Yuma. This is kind of a chip that's maybe in cell phones now. It's just a smaller chip. The accuracy is not as good. It's better than autonomous. It's just not as good as, a GPS that has a big old antenna on it. Antenna on these devices, the surf chip is probably the size of a fingernail. There's not much to it. Let's see. Let's just show you some multipath. So here's obstructions. Basically, the GPS needs line of sight. I skipped all that. Let's see. So basically here you can see, the satellite signal is getting blocked by the mountain. It's not getting to the receiver. Those are things you can't really avoid. Buildings will do that to you. Your body may do that to the GPS antenna. Here's multipath. Basically, it bounces off of something. since GPS is based on time, if you took this line out here and drew it out, it's a lot longer than this one that goes directly to the device. So that's why it gets thrown off. So buildings and trees definitely affect multipath. Now your receiver has, the Geo, I should say, has a technology called multipath rejection called Everest. And it senses, okay, this signal's leaving, spinning in a, they call it right-hand polarized, so it's spinning this way. And when it bounces, the spinning changes, and your receiver detects that and kicks it out. So that's not available on the Nomad, but it's definitely available on the Geo. Solar activity is another one that we really can't, that messes with GPS. It messes with anything communication-wise, phones and power and all kinds of stuff. It goes in like an 11-year cycle, and right now we're kind of at the bottom end of that cycle, so we're not seeing these issues with solar flares right now. But every so many years, you know, probably in about 5 years, maybe 3 years from now, we'll start to see an uptick in this, and then we'll hit the peak again, and then there might be some days where you just can't work, where it doesn't happen as much on the lower accuracy devices, but like a survey grade device, it just won't get down to that centimeter level range, and basically you just don't work. And this NOAA, this space weather, you know, I have an email set up with them, and it just alerts me when it hits a certain level. They call it a K index. Whenever it hits a certain level, it emails me. And, you know, if I get a lot of phone calls saying I can't get good GPS accuracy, we go check this site here. So, and they got a little video on how this all works and what it does to GPS. I think that's about it on those. So I hope that kind of explained the different levels of accuracy. So depending on the Geo, it could be sub-meter, it could be 4-inch, it could be centimeter. And with real time and the settings that we're going to do here, you can get that accuracy in the field, or you could get that accuracy back in the office. So what I'll do here is we're going to open TerraSync. And we will go set up real time. So it always starts with status and skyplot. I'm going to click on status and go to setup. And I have a button here called real time settings. So the default is choice 1, use uncorrected GPS. If I wanted to use sub-meter, no subscriptions, it's free, you would choose integrated SBAS. If you're going to be post-processing anyway, I would say just keep it at use uncorrected, but you do have the option to wait for real time. So what would happen is, let's say you lost signal at 110, and after, let's say, it hit 111, the real time would go away, and it would just sit there, and it would not let you log data because you told it to wait for real time. If you had it set here, after a minute of getting no corrections, it'll resort to choice 2, and then you carry on just collecting data with uncorrected. Some customers don't buy Pathfinder Office, so they keep this set for wait for real time, and then they export out the data straight from the device. So I'll show you how to do that as well. Another option, and this is, since I'm connected to the Geo, it's picking up the real times that the Geo can connect to. RTX was that paid one. This only works with the internet, so the Geo would need access to the internet. The nice thing about RTX over internet is we don't have to worry about the signals being blocked from like an SBAS or OmniStar when we saw the satellite base where you had to have direct line of sight. With the internet correction, you don't need line of sight to a satellite, so it's definitely, you can track the real-time corrections better. And then finally here we have this external source, and if I click on this little wrench, here's where I would go in to program up my different real-time. So in the case of Florida is a VRS network, so I would come in here and choose VRS. I will be connecting to this network on the internet. So then I have to get this address and port. the GPS needs to know where to go talk to and get corrections from. So here I have VRS Florida. So if you just Google Florida DOT FPRN, you'll get their website here, Permanent Reference Network. You have to set up an account with them. You just go down and register. But once you do that, it's free. And then we go in here and look at their products. And here's my port. So this is just a port on the internet. This would be like me just going to Trimbe.com, right? But instead of saying Trimbe.com, it actually has a port number. So all we're doing here is just hitting the port number. So I'm just going to type that in here. Sorry, it's looking for an address number or IP address. Now I'm going to grab my port. Let's see what we got. So these are all single base. And then here's my VRS port. So I'd want 10,000. And then I'm going to choose this RTCM. So basically on my geo, I say, all right, let's type in port 10,000. Well, that didn't work. Then I'm going to say hit the source table. If you weren't connected to the internet, it would throw an error here. Anyway, this is something, if y'all decide to do this, we can definitely help set up. I don't have it connected to the internet right now. But we'd pick the source and it would ask for a username and password. We can do this one. This is the one for Louisiana. I'm going to get the same one because I'm not connected to the internet. I'll just hit cancel. Anyway, so you would just type that in, and you would be able to get real-time corrections. All right. Thing I just hung it up. All right. So that is setting up real-time in TerraSync. Sorry, I got a fire station right down the road from the office here. Give it a second to pass. Let's see what else we got in here. Waypoints. Okay. Do you all ever have to go back to a site that you may need to get a set of coordinates and go to? Is that something that y'all may need?
Yes.
Okay. So how are the coordinates given to you? In a lat long, a state plane?
It really depends on who gives them to us. So the Forest Service uses an AD 1983, and then it just depends on who gives them to us.
Okay, we'll be able to do that.
I think DNR's database is decimal degrees, I think.
Okay, good to know. Okay, so I'll show you how to change that format around. Let me restart my geo. It didn't like me. It didn't like me setting that up there. Let's see. All right, I'm gonna restart it and then we'll bring it up. And then we'll go get some coordinates. That's not what I wanted. So I'm gonna go get a set of coordinates that we can use when it comes up here. I'll just pick a generic spot. Where's my coordinates? There we go. Sorry. So what we're going to do, we'll just punch in this. Let's just use this as an example. Somebody gave me some coordinates. So first thing we need to do for waypoints, setup. So under units, we have this latitude, longitude format. You mentioned DNR may give you the coordinates in decimal degrees. And let's say the Forest Service gives it to you in degrees, minutes, seconds. So under units is where you would go and change that. In our case, the little site we picked over here is in decimal degrees. So I'm going to switch that back to decimal degrees. That's the first thing we do. So we got to have our coordinate. If we're using lat long, we got to have that set right. The second thing is under coordinate system, you want to make sure that you match. So let's say this is just a lat long NAD 83 coordinate. And a trick there is if you hit the letter on the keyboard like N, you can then move through the coordinates quicker because there's hundreds and hundreds of coordinate systems. I'm sorry, datums in here. So if you just hit the letter N, it gets you there quicker. So NAD 83 CONUS, I'm going to hit done. So my coordinate system matches what my input is. In this case, it's Google Earth with decimal degrees. Once that's set up, I click on the setup menu and I go to the navigation menu. I think I sent out a guide. If I didn't, I'll put it on that Trimbe project folder or email it out. The guide has a lot of this stuff in it as well. So the second thing I'm going to do is on the sub menu of navigation, I'm going to go to navigate and I'm going to choose waypoints. And what I'm going to do here is click on new. We're going to create a waypoint file. I'm just going to leave it in the default because I don't have an SD card on my device. I'm going to hit done. And now we basically have a blank screen. So I'm going to go over to options and click on new. So we give this a name. Now, if you wanted to, if you didn't have a coordinate, let's say you had a property corner or marker out in the field, you could go and say, all right, create it from GPS. And then let's say you want to move or stake something out, like you have to go find an area within 100 feet of your point. You could then do you can create offsets. So you could use your GPS position, and then you could say a bearing and a distance, and that basically creates a waypoint, basically like an offsetted waypoint. But what I'm going to do here is just create a basic waypoint. So I'm going to go to latitude. I'm just going to copy this. Except I'm not going to keep the question mark. And then my longitude here. Now, if you don't have a minus sign, we'll end up in China, I think. So it's always good to have a minus sign or at least a W. So if I did it this way, instead of minus 80, I put W, then it would find the right spot. So if you had it like this, the data would end up in China. All right, I'm going to hit done. Oh, I got to enter an altitude. Well, let's see if they got one. If you don't know it, you just put a 0. Here it says 0 meters. So I'm going to put 0. So if you don't have an altitude, just set it to 0. And then I'm going to hit done. And that creates a waypoint. Now, I only have 2 satellites right now. That's why it's not giving me a distance to the target. But basically, you would then double click on that, and it would set the target. It doesn't like when I run this software sometimes through the computer like this, it kind of hangs up. another option here is to click on it and say set nav target. And then in my map, it doesn't know where we're at right now. It doesn't know where to go. But in our map, we would have a little flag like this. You can use the map screen to go to something, or you could use, I like to use the navigate screen here, click on waypoint and go to the word navigate. And basically, when the GPS connects, there's going to be an arrow, and you just basically line the arrow up with this top arrow. So if my arrow is pointing over here, you just basically chase the arrow, and eventually this will come in the right spot. You watch your, in this case, it'd be distance and bearing. And as you get closer, when you get within 16 feet, I think the number is, it'll beep at you. I think it's 16 feet here. Yeah, 16.4 feet. It switches to this close-up range. And what the close-up range does is it puts a circle right here, and then the X is you, and you basically try to put the X over the circle. So navigating is pretty easy. I find it a lot easier to use this screen to navigate than the actual map screen. The map screen doesn't pan with you, like turn around, and it can throw you off a little bit. The other option, if you didn't want to manually input a waypoint, you can create the waypoint on the software, Pathfinder, and then you could come in here and like I have one here for this guy here. If we open this up, I think this was just a test. We created this file online or on Pathfinder, transferred it over, and we could go out and test. So you can, if you have a whole bunch of stuff, if it's just a couple, I would enter it by hand. Just be very careful when you enter these numbers that you don't mess up. Because if you mess up one spot, it could throw you way off, especially the closer it is to that decimal. If you use decimal degrees, minutes, seconds, if you get the minutes wrong, you'll be way off as well. So you just gotta be just check your numbers. I'm trying to remember where this champion tree is. Trying to think what that is. All right, that might have just been something else. So that is waypoints, navigation. Let's see what else we have here. Data manager, copy, delete files. Okay, so let's go to the data tab. And I'm going to go to this file manager. So the main menus we have, map, data, navigation, status, setup. I'm going to go to data. Typically we come in here and make a new file, but this time we're going to go down to file manager. Here's kind of where we can see what's going on with the data. If we want to get rid of some stuff, if I have some salespeople that they never come in here, and I'm probably one of those as well, but they never clean out their unit. Let's say they've been using this for a year and do a lot of demos. They may have, 100-something files. This device will start to run slow if you start to fill up way too much memory space on it. So it's good to come in here and get rid of stuff. In this case, I have one here. It's called NEI Train. I did this last Friday for a class. It has 18 features. It's been transferred. So, and I know it's on my computer, so I would just come in here and say, all right, I want to get rid of this. Options, delete. I can get rid of that. I think these have all been transferred. Let me make a new file so you can see what a non-transferred one looks like. All right, so now I should have one in here. It says not transferred. If I go to delete it, it's going to warn me this file has not been transferred. Are you sure you want to delete it? So you can check that out. Now this is data files. Let's say I want to look up data dictionaries. So in my case, I have a data dictionary that I built for a sales team training, and then I have the data dictionary that we built for you all, but it would list any of them here. I'm not going to delete any of those. let's go back here to data files. Let's say I want to export out some data. I mentioned that some of our customers may not buy the Office software. You can actually export out the shape file. So if I highlight the file, I can say, so it's highlighted here, I go to options, I can say write data to shapefile. Now, it's going to put it here, you can give it a name. It puts it in the coordinate system that you currently have set. In my case, it's latitude, longitude. Let's say I want this file in state plane. If I change my coordinate system to state plane, and I'm going to guess, we'll just leave this one on Florida. Why not? Actually, this is Louisiana. I can find it. Okay, Louisiana South. And the software always defaults to meters. So you want to make sure to set that correctly. Anytime we do state plane around where we're at, we use survey feet. So Louisiana, Georgia, Florida, Alabama. There's like 5 states, I think, in the US that use international feet. We're going to stick with survey feet. Hit done. We'll go back to data, and now you should see when I go to export, my coordinate system should be state plane. So that's how you can export right out of the device without using Pathfinder. Keep in mind, if you didn't have real time, that data can be up to 30 foot off. It hasn't been cleaned up. If you had SBAS and when you collected the data and you're fine with that, that's okay. There's not going to be any metadata that we associated with. So let's open Pathfinder so I can show you what that means. This is just going to be whatever's in your data dictionary. It's going to export out. No projection file. It's just going to be the shape file and 2 other files with it. But what I meant by metadata, under export, we have a properties tab, we have attributes. This is extra stuff that we can add about the data, how it was collected, the date, the time it was recorded, the position, all that can be written in from Pathfinder. Pathfinder has a lot of extra stuff. So this export out here is just generic, whatever's in that data dictionary. So if I hit write, I must have did this on Monday. So it basically writes the file. Another option we saw in here was import or read data from shape. So if you had some shape files loaded on here that you wanted to bring in and look at, let's say you had a boundary line or a study unit, a management area you need to go to, you could load those on there. The key is you need to have the software set up, coordinate set to match whatever coordinate system this data is in, or else it won't show up. This one, I don't think people use this too much. Probably don't use the export one too much either, but they are in there. I would say that's really about it for the data manager stuff. All right, let's go now to Pathfinder. Any questions in TerraSync before I switch gears for Pathfinder? Okay.
We're good.
Okay, cool. So in Pathfinder, I'm going to go through these again. I'm going to start with this configuration manager. I'll just show you what this one is, and then we'll do batch processor again. And then we'll do a general overview. So everything's really under utilities. So I have this one in here called, under other, called configuration manager. And what this is, we went into TerraSync earlier and we built all those settings. We did this on our first session and maybe a little bit in the second session. So under setup, we went through all these settings in the software and did them by hand. What we could do is we can make a new one we can set this up and load it on all your devices. That way they're all the same. So let's say I want to know my base station distance is always less than 50 miles. I use multi-constellation for my GPS. So these are logging settings, accuracy settings. It's basically just following along right here. Just kind of following along these. This is those settings. Post-processed 50 miles. It's in kilometers here, but it's 50 miles. Multi-constellation, that's all good. Then we got our antenna height. If we don't have an antenna pole, we can just say 4 feet. Antenna height, you know, if we're using the geo, there's the 6. Here we go, Geo 7X. If I was using the Nomad, I could set that one up. We're not going to change anything else in there. This all stays the same. Let's say I want to set this for SBAS. I set that up for SBAS. Let's say we want to use we'll just set it to lat long, WGS84. Units. All right. And you can lock this down. The problem is if you forget the password, you can't change it. So you got to delete the software and reinstall it. Well, I have a backup password somewhere, but we have some customers. They have maybe, let's say they have 10 users, 10 different units, and they don't want the crews messing with the settings. They'll password lock the settings so they can't go in there and change anything. But sometimes they forget the password if they got to make a change. I'm not going to set a password. I'm going to save this out, file save as, and we'll go over here to your project, and I'm just going to call this SBAS, real time. All right, so that's saved. You could set up a couple of these. So I do demos all over the South, so Florida is different than Alabama and Mississippi and Georgia. They're all different. And I have configuration files set up for all those different areas. And it makes it nice. Instead of having to remember those IP address and ports and usernames, you can configure all that up. What I'm going to do now is we're going to take this. I'm going to click on send. I'm connected to my geo. I'm going to say add configuration. And now I can grab that SBAS. I'm going to send that over. Disconnect, close. So now in TerraSync, let's say I want to change, this is based on factory defaults. Let's say your settings are all messed up and you want to just start over. If you hit reload, it'll discard the current and reload factory defaults. That puts it back to normal. If I want to then change it, if I had one set up, I can say, oh, I want to set this back up for SBAS real time. I can click on done. It will now load everything up. If I go look in my real time, it's set up already. So it's just a quick way. You build these out, you save them, and you can move. Like I said, I don't have them in here, but I have about 10 or 15 different ones that I use, and I can switch them up as needed. So it's kind of nice to have that. Let's see. So that's Configuration Manager. In this other menu, we have a thing called SSF Record Editor. You'll probably never, ever go in here. I have some customers that are looking for high accuracy data, and maybe they input the wrong antenna height, and they need to fix that for all their points. I would come into this file. It basically tells me everything about the file. So in this case, this particular file was created with a Geo7x centimeter. I can know where it was working, know the antenna height, all that stuff. If the file ever gets corrupted, we have some tools that can go in here and uncorrupt those files. So, but most of the time, I just use this for setting up the antenna height. So right here, if they put the wrong height or the wrong antenna, I can actually edit it. And let's say it was 2 meters, 6.562 feet, and let's say it was a geo. Let's see, Zephyr 3. I could save that, and then all their height measurements will get fixed. That's probably the most thing I do with this software. That, and I just kind of look and see what was going on with the data. So that one y'all probably won't use. That's more for supporting. Yeah, none of this other stuff you'll use. The last one I'll show here is this TerraSync Studio. So you can actually change TerraSync to display your own company logo if you wanted. Doesn't really do anything. It just shows up for a couple minutes. I don't know if I have one. It just tracked. No, I must not have any JPEGs for that. Okay, I don't have an image, but you could load up an image. It has to be 240 by 80 JPEG, and then you can put a little company logo in there. You can turn off features inside of TerraSync. So if I didn't want to see under the map screen here, if I want to take this menu away and then the digitize tool. So some customers, they asked Trimble, their field people were actually digitizing points instead of using GPS. So they just asked Trimble, hey, is there a way for you to get rid of that tool? So if you come in here to Studio and you check that box, it'll get rid of those. Under data, you can customize, TerraSync to turn on and off certain filters. So what they mean by here, if we want to turn file manager off, filter off, data collect options, you don't want them to delete. Let's say we just want to turn all this off. Basically, that menu will be gone, file manager. You won't see point, line, or area generic. Those will go away. So you see here at the bottom, I have them in here. Those will go away. So you can kind of turn some of these off. If y'all don't ever use navigation, which it sounds like you do, we can shut that off. Under status, we could turn off a bunch of stuff. So it's just a way to kind of turn things on and off, and then you just transfer that over. If you want to see what it looks like, you would save the file. And then I have this preview function where it just shows you what it would look like in the field. So this is just a way to dumb down the software, take some menus out to where I don't have navigation in here anymore. Take some features out of here. I guess mine has some generic features in it already. All right, so that's kind of Studio. Don't use that too much. Let's go back to Data Dictionary Editor. So one thing I didn't show while we were building the data dictionary the other day is importing from an existing file. We've had people lose their data dictionaries in the past, and they've asked us, hey, is there any way, we spent a lot of time on that thing, is there any way that you can extract the data dictionary or find it? And if they give me a data file, I can actually import that data from a file. So I grabbed one. Thought I put it in your folder here. Yep, this file right here. So this is going to be like an electrical or pole inventory project, customer built. So as long as you grab that, if they have an SSF or a Trimble corrected file, you can grab that data dictionary out of the file and use it. Or let's say you have another botanical gardens from another state, and they use the Trimble gear and they have a data dictionary that you want to use. You could get that from a file if they gave you one. Yeah, that's kind of that one. We can go over importing data. I didn't go over that. So we have a thing here called utilities and import. I'm going to show you how to take a data dictionary from a database. So let's say we have an Esri file geodatabase. I'm going to click on properties, and I'm just going to say I want the data dictionary file only. So you can import data if you had a whole bunch of data in the database and you want to see that in Trimble, and on your TerraSync you can import all that data. But if you're just looking to extract the data dictionary so that the data matches up, you can say extract the data dictionary. My coordinates lat long. It's going to put it into one file. So I now go and browse to a Esri database. Let's see. I should have. Let's try water. Let's try this one. It's got a lot of stuff in here. Okay, so now in my folder. So instead of doing this all by hand, it's actually created. It took the Esri schema and made a model. So if you all have a database with some, in here, just to show you like this, let's find one. Let's go to hydrant. The hydrant has some domains. A domain in Esri is like a rule with drop downs. So basically it took the Esri rules. So in this case, for hydrants, there was a manufacturer attribute, and it had a domain with all these names of manufacturers, and it's got every hydrant manufacturer available in the US. So I don't have to type all that in. These are a bunch of yes, no's, true, false. Let's go find another one. The water main should have material. See all the materials over here? Has all the diameters. So instead of having to recreate that by hand, it only takes a couple minutes to import. You can do the same thing with shapefiles. It just won't bring in, shapefiles don't have these rules built into them. So if you had shapefiles, it would just bring in all the features, all the attributes, but there's no like domains or list. But you could add that in if you want. So this is a pretty helpful tool, the import. All right, I'm going to take a break for a second here, drink a sip of water, and let y'all just let me know. I think we've pretty much covered everything in my list here. Maybe we do this field to finish, just review. We've got 40 minutes roughly. Any specific thing y'all want to go over?
Oh, this has been really great. I think the overview at the end will be
Overview?
good. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Well, we'll just do from the beginning. So we'll start Pathfinder, create a project, build a simple data dictionary, collect a point or two. We probably won't be able to process it, so what we'll do is we'll set up real time and just use SBAF. I'm actually tracking 9 satellites right here in my office, so we'll just use that, and then we can process and export it. So let's see what we can do here. We'll just start all the way from the beginning. All right, so Pathfinder Office from the beginning. Start. It's in my start list here. I'm just going to call this project Training Final. So it always starts up with select project. I'm going to click New. Training Final. What it's going to do is it's going to create a folder on my C users GNSS projects. Puts it in here called Training Final. It's going to put 3 folders in here: backup, export, base. They're going to be empty when we start off. I'm going to hit OK again. So just to kind of recap, Pathfinder Office, when you start the first time, you have a blank map here. You have these windows under View that you can turn on: Map, Timeline, Data, Feature Properties, Position Properties. The shortcut is right below it, the flag. It's asking me to open a file. It's going to do this for each one, sorry. But all these windows are going to be linked. We're going to focus more on this when we like to use. If you close them, you can always turn them back on. All right, on the right side here, you see my Training Final project. This is called the Project Changer, so you can change to a different one if you want. There's y'all's first one. I'm going to leave it alone, and I'm going to click on this folder. This is the Training Final Project folder, and then there's my 3 backup base export. So we're going to start building this out. Let's say we got a brand new job, and they want us to go collect gates or trails. We'll do trails. So I'm going to go, well, we'll do points because I'm inside here. We're going to go to Utilities, and we're going to go to Data Dictionary Editor. I'm just going to call this Training Final. For those of y'all that weren't on this when we did this the first time, the default version, we have 4.x. This is old. It doesn't contain some of the newer functionality, so I recommend you always choose this 5x. If you forget, if you build it out, you did all this work, and then you realized it was the wrong version, you could save it, open it back up again, and it'll update it for you automatically. But I'm just going to start with 5. You see it's locked it down now. I'm going to click on New Feature, and we'll just do Gates. We'll do Plants. Plants is going to be my feature name. It's a point feature. What if we do invasive? Invasive plants. All right. Now, default. We don't really need to change anything in here right now. We'll come back to that. Symbol. I'm going to hit change and use this little star. Make it green. All right. So I have a feature called invasive plants. Actually, let me go back and talk about this. The way I have it set up right now, if I were to export this out to Esri, it would actually truncate this feature name. One is it doesn't like spaces, so it would put an underscore there, and then it would cut it off after 8 features. So I should really do this. I usually do the lowercase of the first word and then uppercase for the second word, and then the alias is what you all will see. So I'm going to actually fix that and hit OK. And now you see what's stored on the back end of the software and then what we're going to see in the TerraSync software. Next thing we're going to do is create a new attribute. And we're going to start with text field. And let's say y'all have an ID number. We'll click that. Let's say you need date and time. To build a date field. If I want a picture, I choose file name. Type. Let's say I want to make a pick list. I don't know any other ones. All right. Right now I can make a pick list with that. So that's under type. And let's just have one more thing called a comment. All right, I'm going to close this out. Now, if I don't like the order, let's say I did these a little bit out of order. I can highlight it. I have some up and down arrows over here. I can push this down. If I want my picture at the end, I'll put that down. I'm actually going to make a copy of this type. All I did was hit Control C, Control V. The first one is a pick list. The second one I'm going to set to radio buttons just to show you how it's easier to use. So I'm going to save this out. I'm going to put it in this folder here, and I'm going to hit preview. If you install TerraSync Desktop, it's free, and you don't activate the license, you'll be able to use this this tool here, and it basically just shows you an example of what your feature is you built. So there's my invasive species. I can type in my ID. Now I have type. Here's the drop down. There's only a couple in here, so it took one click to get there, one click to select it. Whereas if I go here, I just have to click one time. So I personally like the radio buttons. I'm going to cancel this and close it out. The only issue with the radio button is you cannot put any more than 7 in the list, because that's how many would show up in the screen, and then you'd have to use your stylus and move the screen up on the GPS unit. So that's why the radio button was just to make things speed up, and after 7 they just make you use the list, because you got to hit the drop down or move the screen anyway. So I'm just gonna get rid of 1. So we've got a basic data dictionary here. I'm going to save this out. I'm going to close it. So we built the data dictionary. Now we got to get on the handheld so we can go collect data. So now I go to my next utility. It's under data transfer. It's connected to my geo. I'm sending to the device, so I'm going to click on the send tab. And I want to add in the data dictionary. I'm going to choose that file. It's going to send it over. All right, we will close that out and bring up the GPS unit. Let's start this one from scratch. Well, you know what? Since it's already open, we already know how to open TerraSync. I'm going to go to data. I'm on the data menu. I want to create a new one. It always remembers the last data dictionary you had. So now I'm going to pick training final. And for my so now it's ready to go. I hit create. I'm going to hit OK. I'm good with all that. And now I have my data dictionary. I'm currently tracking 8 satellites. It's connected to WASP. It says it's applying real-time corrections. Now I need to change one thing here. Last time we had our logging set to horizontal. Oh no, it's in the field. Okay. Since I'm using real-time, I want it set to in the field accuracy. I was trying to figure out why my accuracy was so bad, but it's because I'm inside. So that's why we're not seeing good accuracy here. But anyway, I'm going to click on invasive plants. Now out of the box, it starts to log automatically. We'll just let that go. I'm going to pause it here after 10. We'll just say ID 1. Now, if we don't like I don't personally like the GPS to log right when I click on a feature, so I go to options here and I set it to log later. That way I can click on invasive plant, and when I'm ready I can walk over to the feature and log it. So let's say I want to fill out my information first. Let's say I don't know what this thing is in the field. We're going to take a picture of it. It's a blue mouse. All right. So I'm going to take a picture. It's a little grainy, sorry. Hit OK. I don't know if all y'all were on this TerraSync session, but you know what the photo is made it when you see the thumbnail. Now, I didn't log my feature. It has a pause and a 0 up here. If I try to hit done, I'm going to get a warning, you didn't log positions. I don't want to store it without logging, so I'm going to tell it no. And then I'm going to hit log and let it go for 5 or 10 seconds. And I'm going to hit done. So that's just the basic collection. When we are done with that, we hit close. So are you sure you want to close the file? I'm going to tell it yes. I will come back to Pathfinder. Let's say we're back from the field. We open our project. It's in the same training final project. I just go to Utilities, Data Transfer. It's going to connect up. This time I want to receive, so I can click Add, Data File. Anything that hasn't been transferred shows up in blue. So we're going to grab Eric Final. It's going in my project folder. I'm going to click on Open and Transfer All. And it'll transfer the SSF and then the photo. I hit Close, Close. And what we're going to start with is our project folder. And when we first started out in here, we didn't have anything in here. Well, now we have our data dictionary file. We have our Trimbe field data file. That's the SSF. We have a note. This one tells us we transferred a data dictionary, I imagine. Yeah, successfully transferred to. And then this is one saying we just received, same thing, received file. I have this new folder here called Eric Final Squiggly Line Files. That is my photo. So my photo is linked to that spot. In my backup folder, I now have a backup of my field data file along with all the raw data. So the raw data contains 8 files. That's what, when you transfer something or create a file on the GPS unit, it doesn't create this .ssf. That's only created upon transfer. In the field, if you go look in the device, it's actually 8 files if you go into the My Documents TerraSync folder. Trimbe splits this up to allow the unit to run faster and smoother. So there's different components. The DD, that's your data dictionary file. That's how, when I ran that import tool, import from a SSF, it actually extracted that data dictionary file. It's because it's its own thing in the whole scheme of the SSF. Observation is the OBS, that's the GPS. GIS is all the attribute. All this other stuff, I really don't know what it is, but I just know that it takes all 8 of those files to make this SSF. So if you ever lose this file, let's say we delete it, and we're like, oh man, I really need that data. Well, you always have it in the backup. Or let's say for some reason your file's corrupted and you can't process. I'll ask you to send me the raw data. That's all that, and then I can usually, probably 99% of the time, fix those files. All right, well, I cannot process the data, but we can definitely export it. So let's go look at it. So we'll go to File, Open, grab the SSF. It was collected from 223 to 225. The base files won't be available until 3 p.m. That's when NGS will go and grab the files from whatever base it would be. And they do some processing, and 10 minutes later, 15 minutes later, it's available for you to use. So if I tried to process right now, it would fail. and we'll actually run through it. Let's actually change the colors because I can't see this feature. So I'm gonna go layers, view layers, features, and I'm just gonna change this to red. All right. So I have two features here. If I select one, it says my accuracy was 12 feet. It was collected with 3D real time. I'm looking at the bottom here. I have my photo. It's attached. It's under my attributes. So if you want to process, you would go utilities, differential correction. The reason it's asking to save is because I changed the color. It's no big deal. So when we go to process, you're just going to next through all these screens. When I do this though, it's going to come back and say failed, not failed, but 0% coverage. Well, actually it gives you this. It basically, there's no data. Something's going to pop up here, but basically there's no data available. See, unsuccessful, unable to download the data. If it was available, you just run through it. Finally, you just go to utilities, export. I'm going to grab my Google Earth. Hit OK. So now if I go into my base folder, it has that Loyola, but it's an empty file. If I go into my export folder, I have my Google Earth file, and that should show up and be somewhere here in New Orleans. So it basically has my information, my images. I could right click on it, open link, shows the blue mouse. My other one's in here as well. And it just tells me about the information. So that is basically start to finish in 10 minutes. Once you do this a few times, the software is really pretty easy to use. And yeah, there's not a whole lot to it. The one thing I guess I didn't show was we actually set up these export routines under utilities export. It does take a few minutes to set up, but once they're set up, you can just kind of fly through here. You'll see we created a Google one, we created a bunch. A spreadsheet one, so let's say if we want to go out to a spreadsheet, we hit OK. This was a pretty easy one. So once you set these up, it really speeds things up. So basically, I just had an ID that long and then my comments. So that's a spreadsheet we set up actually on Monday. So you can quickly export out to a few different formats once the data is done. So Carrie, I'm not sure what else. There's a lot of stuff in 8 hours, more than I thought we would do in 8 hours. But
Yeah, it was a great overview that we can refer back to, and so that along with the training guide, I think is really good.
Okay.
Yeah.
And we still have the 30-minute stuff. If needed, when y'all use this and there's something we need to go over again, we could definitely do. And like the Nomad, you and I can get on the line and make sure that thing's good to go. But as far as the software, I mean, that's some of this stuff we covered people don't even use. So I mean,
Okay.
Yeah, the main thing is process, the data dictionary, processing, and exporting. I mean, those are the big ones. The biggest thing to me is the data dictionary. If you get that set up right, and you'll have good field data, and the rest just goes over to Esri a lot easier. But we appreciate your time and your business with this, and I'll convert this one. It'll take a few hours. I'll post it online. And like I said, if there's anything that we need to spend a little more time on, we can definitely schedule a time after y'all. I'd say use it a little bit, and then we kind of get back online, and maybe we just do an hour refresher, or 30-minute to an hour refresher if y'all need.
Yeah, that's great. And I think we'll probably set up an additional training for next calendar year.
Okay. Cool.
So thank you so much.
No problem.
Yeah, appreciate it, Eric. It was
Nope.
great meeting you over webinar.
Yeah, I'll be in Georgia soon enough. Janine and I will come. We're gonna come visit the. I'm not sure if y'all work out of the Atlanta group, but we'll definitely go and visit at the gardens over there probably sometime in the first few months. And I know definitely in the summer, Carrie and I forget the other lady's name. We were gonna go and do like a what's new, what's coming out with our gear. So we'll definitely be there and meet in person one of these days.
Awesome.
That'll be great.
Jason and I both work out of the Atlanta office, so I'm sure we'll meet you.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Perfect.
All right. Well, with that, I'll just end the meeting. I'll post the video, and then if you have questions, just feel free to email me.
Awesome. Thank you, Eric.
Thank you.
Thanks, Eric.
Bye, Carrie.
Bye.